Hi, this is Bob Witte, K0NR, and we're talking about getting on the air, making your first VHF repeater or simplex radio contact. This is sponsored by the Tri-Lakes Monument Radio Association in Monument, Colorado. Okay, let's simulate a typical FM repeater contact. It's going to be me talking to Joe, K7AVU. I'm going to play both parts, but Joe's got to get a lower voice. Okay, what might that sound like? K0NR listening.
K0NR, this is K7AVU.
K7ABU, good morning.
Hi, my name is Joe, and the call sign is Kilo 7 Alpha Victor Uniform.
Okay, Joe, got it. Alpha Victor Uniform. My name is Bob. I'm mobile. Just headed to the hardware store.
Hi, Bob. I'm just sitting here at home and wanted to say hi. How is my signal into the repeater?
You sound great here. Your signal is 5.9.
Okay, thanks. I was just checking out this handheld radio I bought.
Well, your radio is working just fine.
Okay, great. Thanks for the signal report.
I'm almost at the store, so I'm going to jump out now.
Thanks for the QSO, Bob. K0NR, this is K7AVU, clear.
Thanks, Joe. K0NR, clear. Okay, let's take a look at a few things you may have noticed. Joe's call is K7 Alpha Victor Uniform. But I thought it was Alpha Bravo Uniform. Victor, well, V sounds like T, sounds like B. You can get those letters confused, especially if conditions are noisy. And that's why we use phonetic alphabets. So Joe came back with correction. He said, my call is Kilo 7 Alpha Victor Uniform. And that made it clear what his call sign was. You may have noticed that I said his signal is 5.9. So I gave him a signal report. That means something in particular. And we'll take a look at that. And Joe used a Q signal. He said, thanks for the QSO. Actually, he said QSO, which is kind of a slang way of saying QSO. QSO just means radio contact. So he's saying thanks for the contact. And then he signed clear with my call sign and his call sign. He only really needed to give his call sign. And then I signed clear with my call sign only. So, maybe a little bit of a contrived radio contact, but really not that different than what you might hear on the air. Okay, so starting the contact. So in this particular contact, I just said K0NR listening, which is a pretty common way to do it. You give your call sign and indicate that, hey, I'm on the frequency if anybody wants to call me. Or you'll also hear K0NR monitoring. I think sometimes that's just a little too passive. And so I may say something like this. This is K0NR listening. Anyone around? It's kind of like, hey, I really want to talk to somebody. Let's have a radio contact. Or maybe I have a specific thing I'm looking for. And if you do, you might as well say so. Can someone give me a signal report? This is K0NR. Or I may be on the top of some mountain doing summits on the air, and I really want to talk to somebody. I might say something like, "This is K0NR on Pikes Peak. Anybody around for a contact?" So if you have a specific thing you're after, go ahead and say so. over on the right here, we have, can I call CQ? This is maybe just a little bit controversial. You'll hear people say, oh, you don't call CQ on repeaters. And the issue is that kind of a normal CQ is a long call. This comes from the high frequency bands where when you make your first call like that, when you call CQ, you make it long because your other stations are tuning around the band looking for someone to talk to. So you want to make a long call so that as they're tuning, they'll come across and hear your signal and go ahead and reply to you. And so you might, on HF, you might say something like CQ, 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 CQ 20 meters. Hello, CQ, CQ, CQ. This is Kilo Zero, November Romeo. I might give my call several times. And that's common practice on HF. Well, if you do that on the repeater, you're just going to annoy everybody. That's way too long. But I might do something like CQ. This is K0NR. Anybody around? Just keep it real short. Don't make long calls like that on a repeater. Of course, always first listen to the repeater or the simplex frequency to make sure it's not in use, right? You got to make sure there isn't a radio contact already underway. The FCC requires us to identify using our call sign. And the FCC rules say identify at least every 10 minutes and at the end of the conversation. Common practice is to go ahead and say your call sign at the start of a conversation, either to let people know that you're on the air or, and looking for a call. And you don't have to say the other station's call sign, but you may need to if you're going to call them, right? So when Joe called me, he used my call sign because he wanted to indicate that he was making a call to me, and then of course he gave his own call sign, so I knew who to reply to. So pretty common sense way to handle it. And the proper sequence when you're using both call signs is always the other station's call sign, then your own call sign. So Joe said K0NR, this is K7AVU. Joe also used phonetics. Here's the standard phonetic alphabet we use in ham radio. It's called the ITU phonetic alphabet, sometimes referred to the NATO as the NATO alphabet as well. It has some other names. You may hear some other phonetic alphabets being used, but this is really the standard. And so, yeah, go ahead and figure out the phonetics for your call sign. That's a good place to start. And then as you gain experience, learn the whole alphabet. I gave Joe a signal report. I said he was 5 and 9. That's the standard way of talking about signal quality. The first number is R, readability, and the second number is S for signal strength. Readability has a scale of goes from a scale of 1 to 5, whereas signal strength is S1 through S9. If you have a real S meter on your radio, that signal strength corresponds to that S meter reading, S1 through S9. A lot of times on VHF radios, we don't really have much of a signal strength meter. We kind of have a little bar graph thing that kind of tells us how strong the signal is, but it's not usually calibrated, or it's often not calibrated or labeled in S units like this one is. But I might still say, if the signal is real strong and very readable, I might say you are 5'9". That's a common way to do that. Or you might hear your signal is 5'9", 59. Some variations on that. But you don't have to get all technical with signal reports. You can also just tell them how good his signal is. Your signal is really strong. Good copy here. or you'll hear things like full quieting into the repeater. And what that means is the signal is strong enough that there's very little noise. When dealing with FM, as the signal gets weaker, you'll hear the noise increase. And so full quieting means no noise. You've quieted the receiver at the repeater. Or you may hear something like slight noise, a little bit of noise in there. Yeah, your signal's a little noisy. Or if there's a lot of noise, you may hear something like your signal is 50% noise. That's pretty darn noisy, not a very good signal at all. And so you'll hear variations on that kind of terminology around noise level. In general, plain language does a pretty good job. You don't have to get all into the jargon that deeply. Although you do need to understand call signs, know how to use those. You'll get used to the format of call signs. Ham radio call signs always have a number in them, for example, and you'll start to realize that that the prefix in the U.S. is always a K and starts with a K, N, or W or A, and it's always followed by a number and then a suffix, and your brain will get used to handling all that, and then you'll learn the phonetics and use those. There is some jargon we probably should make you aware of in case you run into it. We already talked about CQ, not real common on repeaters, but you will hear it on Simplex from time to time. 73 is a common term that's used. It means best regards, and it comes from the old telegraph operators. They would, on Morse code, they would pound out a 7 and a 3, and typically when they're signing off means best regards, and that's how you'll hear it used on the ham bands. It's often at the end of a conversation. It'll be 7-3, K0NR, clear, something like that. Roger has a special meaning. It means received. So when someone makes a transmission and turns it back over to you, sometimes you'll say, Roger, Roger, I copied that, indicating that their signal is getting through. And then we do have these things called Q signals. They are sometimes called Q codes. They are shorthand abbreviations. Again, came from the Morse code world, and really aren't that important with voice communication, but you'll hear them from time to time. So here's a few Q signals you may come across. QTH means location. So somebody might say, my QTH is Denver. QSO, already talked about that one. That means a radio contact. QSL means acknowledge receipt. So particularly if I was getting some kind of information from the other station, I might say QSL to emphasize that, okay, I received what you just sent me. QSY means changed frequency. QRM means radio interference. So there's a longer list than that, but that gives you some idea. They're not really that important, but good to know. Repeater operation and simplex, really the operating procedures are pretty much the same. When you're using a repeater, everyone hears the same thing. Assuming everybody has a decent signal into the repeater, then the repeater is going to retransmit everything and kind of evens everything out. Everybody hears everybody. When we're using simplex, though, the signal strength will vary between different stations. Not everybody hears everything well. So like in our diagram here, we see the portable station can work simplex to the base. The base, to talk to the mobile, has to go through the repeater. There's a mountain in the way that's going to block the base from talking directly to the mobile. It looks like the portable here can probably has a good enough path to talk to the mobile on simplex, so that portable could be using simplex to do that, as well as talking to the base. But then if the base and mobile, if they were on the same frequency, they wouldn't be able to hear each other. but the portable could hear everybody. So you get some variation there on signal strength. In all cases, leave a pause between transmissions in case someone wants to join in. And in fact, repeaters will usually have a courtesy beep that occurs a second or two after a transmission. So after one station stops transmitting, about 2 seconds later, you'll hear some kind of beep or beep beep or some kind of tone that indicates that you're ready to transfer, have the other station start transmitting. And then just in general, go slow, particularly on repeaters. Hit the push to talk button, hit the transmit button, wait a couple seconds, then talk. Some of these repeaters take a second to fire up and come on the air. Especially there are linked repeater systems that may have multiple repeaters that all need to start transmitting, and there may be some delay there. And so really it's don't be in a hurry. Hit the transmit button and wait a few seconds, then start talking. You probably don't need to be in that big of a hurry. How do I find a repeater to use? Good question. You're going to want a repeater that has a strong signal in your location. If you're hearing the repeater really well, then you're going to have better luck getting into that same repeater. You're going to look for a repeater that has activity, right? You want somebody to talk to, and really people that you want to talk to. The thing about repeaters, they are like watering holes. They tend to have groups of people that congregate there, and it's almost like a small community and maybe even a bit of a culture. You may find that some repeaters have people that are interested in talking about technical things all the time. You'll find some repeaters are very oriented towards public service and emergency preparedness and such. Some repeaters may be just people like to chit chat about everything. And so they tend to have a bit of a personality. And so you want to tune around and you may find that some groups of people you want to join in on, and some repeaters, you just don't like the conversations. They're just not interesting to you. So tune around and listen. There is this thing called repeaterbook.com. It's an online repeater directory. And let's go ahead and pull that up. Here's a sample web page of repeaterbook.com. I pulled this up for Colorado Springs. It's showing 38 repeaters listed as being in Colorado Springs. The frequencies listed down the side, the offset, tone, and location. You see the 146.97 is the Pikes Peak 2-meter repeater. So that's got wide coverage. And this also lists whether they're open or not. There are closed repeaters around where basically the repeater owner, whether it's a club or an individual, has decided it's the repeater's not available for open use. It's closed, but so you're going to be looking for an open repeater, open to the general ham population. And in Colorado, most of the repeaters are open. And then you will have to have your radio programmed up for the proper frequency, offset, and tone to access a repeater. I'm not going to cover that on this video. Maybe we can do that in a future video. And then what about simplex? I'm just going to cover 2-meter simplex. The national FM simplex calling frequency is 146.52 megahertz. That's an important frequency to know and have programmed into your radio. Local usage varies quite a bit on this. You may find some areas of the country where this frequency is extremely quiet. In fact, you may go, is this the calling frequency? I never hear anybody calling. Or you may find it gets used a lot. In fact, it may get very busy. and it really is intended for calling. So I'd say don't hog the channel. Don't sit there for hours at a time. Try and limit your usage, and then it really depends on local practice. Some areas people do carry on simplex QSOs on 146.5.2, and in other areas it's frowned upon. But just make sure you're sharing the channel. And then I also listed some other common 2-meter simplex frequencies. You really need to take a look at your local band plan and see which ones are used in your area. But these are pretty common and are used almost everywhere in the U.S. So you might have some of these programmed into your radio as well. And the way those get used is more of a typically it'll be in a range contact, like for maybe for public service communications, doing comms for a parade or a marathon or something like that. Whoever's organizing that will set up which simplex frequencies you're going to use, and you're going to want to make sure you have those programmed in. Okay, nets. Nets are a good opportunity to operate as well. What's a net? It's an on-the-air meeting of radio hams for a specific purpose. So some examples here are a weather net. Here in Colorado, we have a weather net that meets every day during the summer because of the common thunderstorms. And so they share weather information on that net. Or if we have inclement weather, blizzards or whatnot, they'll call a special weather net. The public service folks, ARES or RACES, will often have weekly nets to stay coordinated with their team. Our radio club has a net once a week to share information and to get everybody together. Traffic nets handle formal amateur radiograms that can get passed across the U.S. and around the world. Nets are a good way to get on the air because you know there will be activity at a particular time. So it's an opportunity to be that you know someone will be there. How do you check into a net? Well, that's going to vary. There is a net control station. The NCS manages the operation of the net. And typically what's going to happen is the NCS starts by getting on the air and stating, okay, I'm calling the net. I'm going to and give the purpose of the net. And then usually there's a call for check-ins. And so you just follow the NCS instructions on when you should check in. Procedures are gonna vary. In fact, you might want to listen to any particular net a couple of times before checking in to understand how they do operate and whether general check-ins are welcome. Usually that's pretty obvious from what the net control station is doing, but you might want to listen to the net to understand what they do. Okay, how do we get some practice? Well, I already mentioned, figure out the phonetics for your call sign. That's going to be a pretty useful thing to have. And then one thing I've done a number of times with people is go ahead and set up a simplex contact with someone you know. And so we'll both get on the air, choose some 2-meter simplex frequency that's not going to be busy at all. There's not going to be anybody listening. And go ahead and make a contact. In fact, even if it's like in the same house, you go into 2 separate rooms and get on some simplex frequency and just practice the call sign thing and phonetics and all that stuff. You know, when you get on for a real radio contact, think a little bit about what you're going to say. You got to do the call sign thing and identify your station. But what are you going to talk about? Well, you know, it's not necessarily that hard. Usually radio hams start out with the basics. It's like, where are you? What's your location? How's my signal? Are you hearing me pretty well? Can we actually have this this radio contact, or are we going to struggle? People like to talk about the weather. People like to talk about their radio gear. Hey, I just got this new Yaesu HT. I really like it. The reason I like it is it's got these cool buttons and knobs and stuff. And I put this special antenna on that I'm just trying out, and I like that. Let me tell you all about it. I'm out hiking today, or we're on the top of Pikes Peak trying to see who we can contact, or I'm mobile in the car going to the hardware store. These are all kind of typical things people talk about. And of course, you can probably do better than that, right? Maybe find something a little more interesting to chat about as you gain some confidence getting on the air. Okay, so let's just wrap that up. Again, we did talk about some jargon and such, but really plain language will serve you well. You do need to know your call sign. You need to know the phonetics for your call sign. Really, you should know phonetics in general. And then the whole bit about when I call the other station, I'm going to use that station's call sign first, followed by mine. That's the right sequence. Go ahead and get on the air with someone you know to just get a little bit of practice in a safe environment, and check out some nets in your local area and see who you can see what you can find there. Normally, I'd take questions at this point, but this is just going to be recorded as a video. But you can always drop me an email, and I'll try and help out with any information that you're looking for, or any questions you might have. So with that, I will sign clear. K0NR 73.